Hi, boys and girls. I'm Firefighter Brendan from the Ayer Fire Department. And this year, since you guys are in 5th grade and you've done fire safety for the last 5 years now, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk to you about safety around railroads and trains, which is particularly important here in Ayer and Shirley because we have a lot of those. First thing is pretty straightforward, right? We always want to be careful if we're going to cross train tracks, whether that's here at the train station in Ayer or in Shirley, if we're crossing them in a car, or if we're maybe in Boston and we're taking the subway somewhere, we're crossing those green line tracks to get to the Red Sox game, whatever that might be. We always want to be careful. Just like crossing a street, we want to look both ways. Trains move pretty fast, and we do not want to get hit by one for sure. This is a video. It was actually filmed right here in Ayer, and this shows a woman who decided to cross the tracks right in front of a locomotive. Pretty close, probably should have waited for that to go by. So just watch that quick little video and see if you would have made a different choice in the same situation. So we've all seen a car maybe slam on its brakes and have to come to a stop real quick. And a car can stop pretty fast, right? If we're traveling at 55 miles an hour, which is the low end of highway speed, a car is going to take about 200 feet to stop. So 2/3 of a football field, right? A school bus is going to take an extra 30 or so feet to stop. And a big truck like an 18-wheeler is going to take the whole football field, 300 feet, to come to a stop. A subway train or a light rail train like we might see in Boston is going to take about 600 feet. So we're talking about 2 football fields. A freight train, like the ones that pass through Ayer and Shirley every single day, they have a lot more mass. They're a lot heavier, and they're going to take a mile or longer to stop. So for reference, if a train slammed on its brakes at the train station in Ayer and it was headed west, it would be over the bridge into Shirley, over the river, before it actually came to a stop. Just to give you an idea of what that linear mile looks like. It's a very long way for a train traveling at 55 or more miles an hour to come to a complete stop. The commuter rail trains are able to stop a little faster because they're not as heavy, but they still take a long time to stop. They can't stop very quickly when they're going fast. One behavior we always try to discourage is putting things on the tracks to have the train flatten them. This has been going on for a long time, that people will put coins or other small objects on the train tracks to have them be flattened out. And the thing with this is you have to get very close to the tracks to do this. We've already discussed that trains are fast and they can come up kind of quick. And the other thing is, if you're waiting to collect your coin or whatever that's flattened and you're waiting nearby, even if you think you're a safe distance away, that object might get shot out from underneath the wheels at a high rate of speed. So we don't want anybody being hit by those objects like coins or pennies or whatever. The other danger is that while a quarter or a coin isn't going to affect the train, larger objects like a railroad spike or a rock might affect the train, and we certainly don't want to cause a derailment, which could injure a lot of people, including you if you're anywhere in the area. So never put anything on the tracks. It's better to just skip this one. We want to never climb on or ride on freight trains. Freight trains are not designed to carry passengers. They don't have any approved safe areas to ride. People, a lot of times, when they are going to ride on these trains, they'll hop onto them when they're moving, which is very dangerous because they can get, if they fall off or lose their footing, they can slide underneath the wheels, and anything that goes underneath that wheel is going to be severed, a leg or a hand or an arm. So very dangerous to hop onto a freight train, especially if it's moving. We should only be riding on passenger trains and entering at the approved designated points on those trains. A train that is stopped can start moving at any time without warning. So a lot of times if you're walking and you're going to cross tracks and there's a train stopped, people will think to themselves, well, I can just cut between these 2 cars or crawl underneath. The thing is, that train, the engineer can't see you if you're doing that, and the train may be, a mile long. It might go around a corner. You have no way to know when that train is going to start moving, so there's no safe way to cross through, in between, underneath, over, or around. Around is the only safe way to go. You have to find a different route, whether that's like a bridge over the tracks, a tunnel underneath the tracks, or to just wait until the train is gone. But never, even if the train is stopped, we shouldn't be cutting between the cars. We got to remember that trains are wider than the tracks, and this photo does a pretty good job illustrating that trains can hang over the actual rails as much as 3 feet on each side. So we don't want to be close to the tracks when a train is approaching because they do hang over the edge. Particularly in corners, they can actually stick out. The ends can stick out pretty far. So we want to be always a safe distance, 10 or 20 feet back from the tracks on a public way. So we don't want to be anywhere close because they do hang over. Railroad trestles, right? There's plenty of them around. We don't want to cross these for a couple of reasons. One, they're not designed for people to walk across. They don't have any sort of proper walkways. So you're going to be standing on like the railroad ties or whatever, which probably are not adequately spaced that you couldn't fall between them. Also, these bridges aren't maintained for people to walk on. They're not intended for that purpose. So there's no safe walkway. And also, as this photo illustrates, if a train does arrive, you have nowhere to go except to probably jump out of the way, which could potentially be a long fall. So we want to stay off of any sort of railroad trestles or bridges. The other thing to remember is that all railroad tracks are private property. They're owned by the railroads, even if they're not in use. And you're not allowed to walk on them. It is trespassing to walk on them. So you should be staying off of and away from train tracks, even if they're not in common use all the time, because they're not yours and you're trespassing. So never go into a railroad tunnel. Railroad tunnels are often pretty much the size of the train. They don't usually leave a lot of extra room on the sides. So if you were in a tunnel and a train does arrive, you may have nowhere to go to get out of its way, and you could be squished between the train and the wall. Also, tunnels are dark. You're not going to have good visibility. So it's easy to fall and hurt yourself, even if you weren't trying to outrun a train. And if you're running to try to get out of the way of the train, you have a very high chance of tripping, falling, injuring yourself, not being able to get out of the way. So railroad crossing, we're going to talk about a couple different types of railroad crossings you might encounter. We've got pretty much all of these around here. So this type only has signs. There's no gates or bells or lights or anything fancy like that. It's just 2 signs. So this is probably a track that isn't used very much. And we do have a couple of these in Ayer on Fitchburg Road and Groton-Shirley Road on a seldom used track. This is the more common type that we think of. This has the signs as well as the wigwag flashing lights and the gates that lower. We've got a bunch of these in Ayer and Shirley. They're at most of the major crossings. So these are familiar to us. Everybody should know when you're driving or if you're on foot or your bicycle, you should never go around the gates if they're lowered, even if you can't see a train coming. It's better to wait, go around a different way if you're in a rush, or if the gates are staying down for a long time, you can call the police department on the business line and find out if the gates are malfunctioning, and they'll be able to talk to the railroad. This third type, which there's one of these in downtown Shirley on Front Street by Davis Street there. This has the big tower that overhangs out into the middle of the road. These are usually used on either bigger roads or kind of funky intersections, like that one in Shirley is kind of a weird intersection with some funny angles. So it just helps to get people's attention from a little bit further away and helps them to be more aware that they're about to cross over some train tracks. This video is from, I believe it's from the UK, and this shows a car that actually got stuck between the gates. They went through the gates as they were closing, and then they couldn't get out the other side. So watch this video and the predictable results that happen here. This is a light rail train, I think, if I remember correctly. When a train, particularly a freight train, hits your car, it would be about the same as your car hitting a soda can. The train is probably not going to flinch. It's gonna push the car right aside. I mean, these trains can be half a mile to a mile long and moving at 50 to 70 miles an hour. So the train is not going to be affected by the impact of the car, and it's going to push the car a great distance down the tracks, potentially. So you have a very low probability of survival if you're in a car that gets hit by a train. So that's what we always want people to keep in mind when they think about going around crossing gates to zip across the railroad tracks real fast. The other thing is sometimes you have a blind spot where there might be a train parked or there's a corner and you can't see. So going around those gates is always a bad idea, and you should just never do it. That'll be a handy one when you take driver's ed. Okay, so we're also going to talk a little bit about safety on platforms and around subway and light rail vehicles, because normally we have access to a lot of those, right? I think normally when it's not the pandemic, we've probably all gone into Boston or Cambridge and ridden the subway. Maybe we've gone to a sporting event or a concert or some other fun activity, and we've gotten to ride the subway. So we've got a few different types, right? We've got the Green Line trolleys. So these run on the streets as well as in tunnels, and the wires for these are up overhead. So these are pretty safe. We can cross the tracks of the Green Line trolleys because there's no electrified third rail. So the red and orange and green lines in Boston, we can't cross those tracks. They've got that electrified third rail that's extremely high voltage current. That is, it would kill you if you touched it. So those are the type that normally you're up on a platform above the rails, and that's why you don't want to horse around and try to jump over or go down into that pit with the rails in it for any reason. That's why you're kept away from that. And just in general, when we're waiting for a subway train or a trolley, we want to stay behind that thick yellow line, and that's so that we don't get hit by the train, lose our balance and fall in front of it. Anything like that obviously would not be good. So we want to stay behind that yellow line. That helps keep us safe, and it helps the conductors know that they can approach the station normally and everything like that. When we're on a train, obviously, if seats are available, we want to take the seats. If we have to stand, because sometimes on the subways and trolleys, we certainly have to stand. So if you're standing, make sure you're holding on to something, a seat back, a railing, an overhead rail, whatever the case might be, so that you don't fall or tumble if you come to a quick stop or take a quick turn. So that pretty much covers our material. So if anybody has any questions, you guys can forward those to us through the school, and we will try to answer them for you. And that's about it. So thanks for listening to our presentation today. Have a great day.